Hello, and a very warm welcome to this, the first of a two-part feed-forward conditioning special, brought to you by the Triot Group. Over these two episodes, we're going to guide you through the entire conditioning process. The ultimate goal, to help you not only produce a pellet with optimal quality, nutrition, and safety, but also at an optimal price and capacity. In this first episode, we focus on the importance of overheated dry steam with our resident experts from IVS, Frank Dielersen and Hans van Otter, otherwise known as the Steam Team. They'll explain the significance of good quality steam and how it can solve many problems in the feed mill, from poor pellet quality to bottlenecks and breakdowns to reduced capacity. You'll also hear firsthand how a major IVS customer, Agrival, has improved its own operations through better quality steam and receive a practical demonstration of how the steam dosing unit actually works. We'll also be joined by Triot Director Eric Otterwanger and by our conditioning specialist from PTN, Ronald ten Carter. He'll outline the bigger conditioning picture and will then return to this topic in more detail next month. In the meantime, we have a packed show ahead, so let's join the team and discover why it all starts with steam.
Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Feed Forward, the first of a two-part series on conditioning. Now today we're focusing on steam, and as you can see, I'm in the boiler room, where I'm joined by Triot's steam specialist from IVS, CEO Frank Dielersen and Technical Director Hans den Otter. Welcome, Hans. Well, let's get straight to it. I mean, shortly we're going to get into the details of what constitutes good steam and how to optimize your steam dosing, etc. But first of all, why does the whole conditioning process start with steam?
Before I start, do you mind I will take off my jacket?
No, sure.
It's a little bit hot in here.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, when we talk about the broader conditioning process, turning feed into pellets, steam is the starting point, along with the raw materials, of course. You need a good quality steam to penetrate into the center of the feed particles and probably conditioning and hygienize the feed.
And why is this such a challenge for the feed mills?
Well, steam is not always an easy thing to understand or deal with. It's hot. It can be dangerous, you can't see it. For feed mill owners, and especially the operators, it's often a little bit misty.
Misty, indeed. Well, what does it mean on a practical production floor level?
I can imagine that many of our viewers today have experienced problems, such as difficulty with starting up the press in the morning, blockage of the pellet press during startup phase, loss of capacity because the meal is too cold and hasn't reached the right temperature.
And that's it?
No, we have more problems.
More problems.
Loss of capacity also because the pellet is too wet. It can blocking the press. Also water entering the conditioner during standstill. And there can be unaccepted power spikes in the pellet press during production.
And all these problems are related to steam?
Yes, surprisingly, often due to steam. The steam dosing unit cannot reach the desired temperature. And even when it does, it doesn't do it so in the right time. So, instead of feeding steam into the conditioning unit, the feed mill is using actually hot water.
So, in other words, the steam is unable to penetrate the feed in the conditioner in the optimum way.
Yes, that's right. The conditioning process is all about enabling to optimally transfer the heat into the core of the feed particles. Without hot, dry steam, you end up with pellets that are too wet, not properly hygienized, and which then cause bottlenecks in the production.
I'm sure that equals lost capacity and lost money?
Yeah.
Money, of course.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
To put it simple, in our experience, it's when you put poor quality steam into the conditioner,
right,
you are going to get the poor quality of product out of it.
Right. Now, you mentioned your experience, of course, and I'm trying to get at something. I understand you've been working in this industry for over 30 years?
Yes.
Yeah. And I've even heard that you're known as the steam doctor, is that correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, so doctor, we have a patient, the feed mill, showing symptoms like poor quality, for the pellets, reduced capacity, etc., etc. We have a diagnosis, poor quality steam. We know the treatment, very hot, dry steam. Doctor, how do we cure the patient?
Actually, it's a very short answer. To produce the overheated dry steam I mentioned, you need first and foremost the right steam dosing unit. And of course, that's what we do at IVS. In fact, we produce steam up to 150 degrees at a pressure of 2.2 bars. Pretty much the higher temperature you will find.
Okay, and how many of these IVS steam dosing units are spread around the world?
At the moment, over 1,000.
Okay, that's impressive. Those are your credentials. Now, we're going to dig into all of this a lot deeper later in the show. Frank, you're the second member of the STEAM team, and you're no novice at this game either. You've been working in this industry for pretty much your whole adult life, I've heard.
That's right, Lars. Ours is a family business. My father, founder of IVS, he taught me much of everything I know about the business. And over the years, we developed into what I would call a STEAM expert center for feed and pet food industry. We guide and advise customers worldwide throughout the entire process.
Great, well, I'm talking to the right man then.
I hope so, and of course, you're right. It does all start with steam, but which also means looking beyond the steam dosing units.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, as Hans just mentioned, it's no coincidence that we are all sweating in this boiler room today. It starts with steam, but where does the steam come from? How is it transported? We also look at the boiler and the piping.
And this is then where problems could start?
You'd be amazed how often we spot obvious problems right here. Incorrect boiler pressure, reduced boiler capacity, wrongly added chemical boiler additives, and dewatering problems throughout the entire pipeline trajectory. And as a result, too much moisture in the piping.
And this is feeding the steam dosing unit, of course.
Yes, but it doesn't just impact the steam dosing unit. It also affects the conditioning process, the pelleting process, and ultimately the quality and cost of the product you produce.
So even though the steam dosing unit is important, when you visit a customer, and let's say they're experiencing the types of problems that Hans has described, you're looking at everything.
Of course, this is a feed mill. Everything is connected. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And over the years, we have become very good in finding and fixing those weak links.
Okay, well, let's leave it there for a second. The topic is heating up quite nicely, and so am I. Okay, we've just started this episode, of course, talking about customers and their typical steam-related challenges. And now we're going to hear from one of those customers. But first, we like to invite you, our viewers, to get involved. And at the end of this show, we'll have a short Q&A session answering all sorts of questions that you might have and that you can submit. Now, do any of the issues we've mentioned here sound familiar, perhaps? Send in your steam-related question via the live stream, or should I say live steam. Now, as we've said, steam is just a starting point. Do you have a broader question, perhaps, about conditioning? Again, just get in touch, and we'll get back to you. Back to steam. We're extremely grateful today to be joined by Mr. Jan Groen, who works for Agrifau, a valued IVS customer. Herr Groen, herzlich willkommen. Bitte stellen Sie sich und Ihre Rolle bei Agrifau vor.
Ja, gerne. Also mein Name ist Jan Groen, ich bin 24 Jahre alt, gelernter Müller, habe anschließend noch meinen Meister und meinen Techniker gemacht. Bin jetzt seit August 2019 bei der Agrifau als technischer Betriebsleiter. Meine täglichen Aufgaben sind unter anderem die Personalplanung und die Ausbildung von neuen Mitarbeitern, aber auch hauptsächlich die Planung von Wartungsarbeiten und Anlagenoptimierung. Also die AgriV ist stationiert am Niederrhein und im Westmünsterland. Wir haben insgesamt 15 Standorte, darunter 4 Kraftfutterwerke. Wir sind eine Genossenschaft. Wir fassen über 2300 Mitglieder, haben momentan 360 Arbeiter ungefähr und generieren im Jahr einen Umsatz von über 300 Millionen Euro.
Vor welchen Herausforderungen stehen die Betreiber bei der Arbeit mit Dampf?
Das sind meiner Meinung nach zweierlei Sachen. Einmal die Vorbereitung von dem Ganzen, also die Anlagenplanung. Wir müssen sicherstellen, dass wir trockenen Dampf, genügend Dampf bereitstellen für die Produktion. Wenn wir schon mit nassem Dampf ankommen an dem Konditionierer, dann können wir auch nicht erwarten, dass unsere Mitarbeiter da ein vernünftiges Produkt rausmachen. Ist dann einfach nicht mehr möglich. Also wir müssen die Voraussetzungen schon schaffen beim Anlagenbau, bei der Anlagenplanung. Und anschließend, wenn das gegeben ist, sind unsere Mitarbeiter dafür zuständig, dass die richtige Dampfmenge zum jeweiligen Futter hinzugegeben wird. Wir wissen, glaube ich, alle, Dampf kann helfen beim Pressen. Es kann die Durchsatzleistung steigern, es kann den Energieverbrauch senken und die Pelletqualität verbessern. Wenn wir aber zu viel Dampf zugeben, dann haben wir die Probleme, dass das Futter zu nass ist. Wir haben schmierendes Material in der Presse und die Presse fährt zu. Wir haben einen Produktionsverlust, Einbußen. Es ist also wichtig, dass wir das richtige Verhältnis und die richtige Menge für jedes Futter dann zugeben. Ja. Das sind so die Herausforderungen meiner Meinung nach.
Sie haben kürzlich beschlossen, eine Ihrer Produktionslinien mit einer IWS-Dampfdosiereinheit aufzurüsten.
So, erstmal, warum wir eine neue Dampfdosierung brauchten, wir hatten einen defekten Konditionierer und eine defekte Dampfregelstrecke. An beiden Geräten ist Dampf ausgetreten. Es ist also nicht mehr, also wir hatten Energieverlust allein dadurch, dass wir die Anlage betrieben haben, weil der Dampf in die Umgebung ausgetreten ist. Wir haben hier in Burlo ein komplett neues Werk gebaut bis 2019. Dort wurden auch die IVS-Dampfregelstrecken verbaut, sind sehr zufrieden damit. Und daher haben wir uns dann am anderen Standort in Dinken auch dafür entschieden, dieselben Strecken auch zu verbauen. Zwar eine Nummer kleiner, weil da die Pressen auch kleiner sind und dementsprechend eine geringere Durchsatzleistung benötigt wird.
Und welche Verbesserungen sehen Sie bisher?
Also zum einen die Pelletqualität ist deutlich besser geworden. Wir haben leider keine Abriebtests gefahren, also nicht nach Frost oder sonstigen. Wir haben aber von Kunden früher vor dem Umbau öfter Reklamationen bekommen, dass sich die Pellets im Silo aufgelöst haben. Also wenn die Pellets verladen werden, transportiert werden und eingeblasen werden mit dem LKW, man kennt es, wenn die Qualität nicht stimmt, wenn die Festigkeit nicht stimmt, kommt im Silo leider nur noch ein Großteil Mehl an. Die Problematik haben wir ja zumindest reduzieren können. Abstellen können noch nicht. Reklamation kommt immer. Irgendwer beschwert sich immer wegen irgendwas. Zum anderen ist es die Energieeinsparung. Also bei selber Durchsatzleistung haben wir einen geringeren Energieverbrauch. Das steht relativ zur Durchsatzleistung. Wenn wir Energie einsparen können, können wir im Umkehrschluss die Durchsatzleistung wieder erhöhen. Daher sind wir eigentlich nur mit positiven Ergebnissen aus dem Umbau rausgegangen.
Was ist Ihrer Meinung nach das allgemeine Wissen über Dampf?
Was ich mitbekommen habe hier bei der AgriV, war mit Wasserzugabe und Dampf allgemein nicht so viel. Also es hat stattgefunden, ja, aber Dampfzugabe beispielsweise nur bis zu 50 Grad im Konditionierer, 50, 55 Grad. Mittlerweile sind wir da, dass wir je nach Futter bis zu 70, 72 Grad fahren. Natürlich, man gibt mehr Dampf zu, da muss auch erstmal Energie reingesteckt werden. Aber was man im Umkehrschluss an Durchsatzleistung, Energieeinsparung und Pelletqualität rausbekommt, wiegt die Mehrenergie für den Dampf deutlich auf. In meinem Ausbildungsbetrieb war bekannt, dass Dampf helfen kann für die Pelletproduktion. Da war oder wurde nicht wirklich eingesehen, dass es auch eine Obergrenze gibt. Also Dampf hilft, Dampf ist das Allheilmittel, immer mehr Dampf zu geben. Da sind dann aber regelmäßig die Pressen zugefahren wegen Feuchtigkeit im Produkt, womit dann auch kein geholfen waren, wo wir dann übertrieben gesagt mehr Stillstandzeiten hatten als wirklich Produktionszeiten.
Letzte Frage. Gibt es irgendwelche Erkenntnisse, die Sie unserem Publikum mitteilen möchten?
Also ganz wichtig meiner Meinung nach ist trockener Dampf im Konditionierer. Ja, was ich gelernt habe, ja, der Herr Den Otter von Ihnen war mal bei uns, weil wir Probleme hatten mit feuchtem Material in der Presse. Wir haben dann die Dampfstrecke abgemessen, Stück für Stück die Temperaturen gemessen und sind zu dem Ergebnis gekommen, dass beim Übergangsstück von Dampfriegelstrecke zum Konditionierer nur noch eine Temperatur von 55 Grad vorhanden war, was uns dann gezeigt hat, dass wir eigentlich nur noch mit warmem Wasser produzieren und nicht mit Dampf. Das fand ich persönlich ziemlich interessant. Also die Problemfindung erstmal, damit man das Problem dann beheben kann. Ein neuer Konditionierer an der Stelle hätte uns nicht viel weitergebracht.
Herr Grohn, vielen Dank.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Well, fascinating stuff, and thanks once again to Mr. Grohn from AgriFowl for sharing his experience here with us today. I'm now rejoined by Frank, and as you can see, they've kindly led us out of the boiler room. Thanks, guys. And we're now in the actually in the heart of the conditioning process itself. That was a rather interesting interview, right, with AgriFowl. Any thoughts, Frank, on that?
We achieved success here, although it hasn't always been easy.
How come?
Because the results of the first steam dosing line were so successful, AgriFowl asked us if we could get the second line installed as soon as possible. We responded to that urgent need and managed to achieve this despite of all the severe COVID restrictions in place.
Well, that can't have been easy.
It was a challenge, of course, but we set ourselves the highest standards because, as we can see from this interview, there's always room for improvement.
Indeed, I get a sense of an untapped opportunity when it comes to steam. If you just joined us, then welcome to Feed Forward. We are here in our virtual studio talking to experts about the conditioning process and how it all starts with steam. I'm now joined by Ronald ten Kate from PTN, the conditioning and pelleting specialists, and Erik Ottervanger, one of the directors at Ottervanger Milling Engineers. Erik also orchestrates integrated feed mill solutions at Triot Group. Triot is the parent of all the companies involved in this broadcast today. Erik, so what are your thoughts on steam?
Well, Lars, producing the dry overheated steam we have mentioned sounds easy, but isn't. This is exactly why we are glad IVS became part of Triot. Prior to that, we had spent 20 plus years working with them, so we have seen firsthand many times the difference they can make.
And what is that difference?
I can say honestly that the IVS steam dosing unit is unique. It has the ability to perform very consistent and at an unusual high temperature. That is the absolute key.
And why is that?
If the steam quality is guaranteed, this enables the feed mill to push its capacity further and unlock revenue potential. The reality is that most operators are naturally concerned about blockages and they are sometimes forced to play it safe. Then they aren't pushing the capacity as much as they could do.
No, I see what you mean. I mean, I guess that when you are producing large volumes of feed every year, then that these small improvements really add up.
Yeah, as Frank says, it's about continuous improvement. How do we produce a product with quality-cost ratio that's better than your competitor?
Yes, cost, that's an interesting one. I understand that this IVS steam dosing unit is more energy efficient too. And apart from the fact that feed mills are under more pressure now to meet sustainability targets to reduce their CO2, And they also have to reduce their running costs, right?
Yes, if feed mill operators are looking for a win-win, then this is one obvious way to achieve it.
Right, and of course, another point is to make sure that this high-quality steam isn't wasted by using it in inefficient or incorrect conditioning systems.
Yes, exactly.
Ronald ten Kate, welcome. As the conditioning expert at PTN, you work very closely with IVS, so this must sound all quite familiar to you, I would imagine.
Yes, it is. As my colleagues have mentioned, one of the key goals of this process is to improve the pellet quality and the productivity of the pellet press.
Yes, but when we talk about conditioning, there are broader considerations, right?
Yes, the conditioning process has 4 critical functions. First one is to improve the physical pellet quality, as just mentioned. Second is to increase the output of the pellet mill. The third one is to optimize the nutritional quality of the feed. And the last one is to eliminate salmonella and other bacteria in the feed.
And how do you get to an optimal conditioning system?
Well, we need 4 things for an effective conditioning system. The first one is the right high temperature created by overheated dry steam. Secondly, we need the right moisture content created by either steam or water, depending on the recipe and the product quality needed.
So the product quality will vary?
Yes, it's all about the individual situation. For example, an integrator will often have different quality parameters to commercial feed producers, where dust and broken pellets are not allowed.
And the third?
The third is retention time. For example, for hygienization, we need a retention time of at least 3 minutes at a temperature above 85 degrees Celsius. To achieve this, you need the correct type of retentioner with enough volume to buffer the feed for this period.
And the fourth and final?
Yeah, finally we have mechanical friction. If you want to improve the quality and the capacity of the line, then you can increase mechanical force on the feed by using equipment like a boa compactor or expander as a pre-compacting machine on top of the pellet mill. But we will come back to this next month.
Sounds like a lot of variables.
Well, that's the challenge. It all starts with steam, but it definitely doesn't end there. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Every conditioning setup needs to be tailored to the unique needs of the customer, its raw materials, the formulations, and the capacity.
Well, that's clear to me, and you and your colleagues, of course, will be digging into that next month in part 2 of our conditioning special.
Absolutely. We're going to walk viewers through the entire conditioning process in a simple but practical way. We'll explain the different systems and when to use them based on the variables we just mentioned.
Well, that promises to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. We are receiving some really good questions via the live stream, but please keep them coming in. And if you're triggered by what Ronald or Eric just have been talking about, please send in your questions about the broader conditioning process. And we'll get back to you and potentially even tackle them in our next show next month. Right, we're now back with Hans the Steam Doctor to take a closer look at the IVS steam dosing unit. A nice bit of kit you got here, Hans.
Thank you.
Now, before you demystify the whole steam dosing unit, how it works for our viewers, let's talk size, because this is not a real life-size model, is it?
No, but you're right. The size is very important. Our steam dosing unit comes in 15 different sizes. And that's really unique in the industry. It's all about precision. Get the size of the steam dosing unit even slightly wrong, it can seriously affect your results.
Okay, so how does a steam dosing unit work?
Okay, let's start with the basics. The steam dosing unit cannot produce steam itself. It needs a supply of steam. So firstly, it's important that a supply of normal saturated steam from the boiler has a pressure from 6 to 8 bar. If you want to know the steam pressure, you can see at the pressure gauge mounted here.
And what is this?
The steam dosing unit has a steam valve to shut off the steam for maintenance and other issues. And a filter is mounted to protect the steam parts from any dirt coming out of the system.
And what's next?
The saturated steam will come into the dosing unit and arrives at the first dewatering vessel. This is where the condensate in the system will get separated and drained by a steam trap. However, if the saturated steam coming in is too wet, the first dewatering vessel will not be able to take out all the condensate.
And this is why it is so important to have dry steam, right, with no water or condensate.
Yes, that's right. After this first dewatering process, the steam pressure will be lowered using a reducing valve to 2.2 bar.
Okay. Okay, so we've created the dry steam at the right pressure. And what happens after that?
After reducing the pressure, we create a steam flash in the oversized dewatering vessel. This increased the temperature to up to 140–150 degrees. As you can see, to check the steam temperature, we have a thermometer installed on the dewatering vessel.
Okay, so we can see precisely what condition our steam is in.
Yes, the normal saturated steam temperature at 2.2 bar will be about 135 degrees. So we are quite above that.
Okay, so the big question is then, how do you get to 150 degrees Celsius if others can't?
Well, I'm afraid that I cannot give all our secrets away.
Okay, fair enough. But you can't blame me for asking, of course. Hans, what happens next?
Next, the steam leaves the dewatering vessel at the top, where we can see a shut-off valve. This valve should shut off the steam supply to the conditioner, and it opens when the conditioner is started.
Okay, so is this how we then control the quantity of steam into the conditioner?
No, because we are not quite finished. The final, very important part of the dosing unit is the regulation valve. This regulates the steam into the conditioner and communicates with the temperature sensor or with the flow meter if you have one installed.
What do you mean if you've got one installed?
It's not strictly necessary to have one, but we certainly recommend it.
And why would you recommend it?
The flow meter enables you to speed up the start-up phase by adjusting the steam supply into the conditioner based on the capacity of that conditioner. It then records how much steam is being dosed.
So we know how much moisture is added to the products and at what temperature.
You've got it, Lars. With better quality steam and greater control, it is possible to eliminate the problems I mentioned at the beginning of this show.
Well, thank you so much, Hans, for demystifying all this and describing it in a way that even I could understand it. And if any of those viewers out there still want a more detailed explanation of how this all works, I would imagine they can contact you.
Of course, this is what we do.
So we're back with our other steam and conditioning experts, Frank and Ronald, ready to conclude this episode with some of your questions. Now, first question that somebody has asked. We sometimes work with very dry raw materials that can be inconsistent in quality. Can steam solve this problem?
Steam can solve many problems, but I must stress that it cannot solve everything. Sometimes the raw material is so dry that we need to get some moisture into it. Liquid dosing. Well, this show is about steam, of course, but at IVS we have worked with customers worldwide for many years on liquid dosing solutions. This is also one of our core activities.
That's excellent. Now, another question we've received. I'm finding condensate when I started the press. Why is this happening and what can I do about it?
This sounds like there could be a possible breakdown of one or more steam traps. For example, in your steam dosing units or even somewhere in the steam pipeline trajectory. One thing we haven't really touched on yet is the importance of maintenance. A steam dosing unit is like a piece of technology. You need to look after it. And this is a general piece of advice. Make sure you run a maintenance check on the steam equipment every year.
And is this a service that IVS offers to customers?
Absolutely. But this is also something feed mills can check themselves. It usually takes little time and it's worth the investment. And if for any reason the dosing unit needs new parts, we hold almost 100% of all replacement parts in stock and ready to go.
Question here for Ronald. Why is it that when I add more steam to the conditioning process, I find that my pellet quality is actually reducing?
By using more steam, the resistance over the die will reduce, which results in a lower pressure in the die on the pellets and a lower pellet quality. As long as the pellet mill is not running on full motor load, a thicker die can be chosen to improve the pellet quality.
There you go, easy peasy.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it can be very complicated with many variables based on the individual customer and the equipment being used.
So it's quite simple after all, Ronald. If anyone has this problem, they should just get in touch with you.
Yes, they can.
Exactly. Okay. So Frank, in conclusion, what are the key takeaways that viewers should get from this episode?
Well, Lars, ultimately I would say there are 5 things to remember. Number 1 is quality of steam, which is ultimately delivered from the boiler to the steam dosing unit at the conditioner. Then we have number 2, the correct sizing of the piping and steam dosing unit, because each process is unique. So it's essential to pre-dimension the unit for optimal quality. Third one, positioning of the steam dosing unit. This needs to be carefully considered. Don't place it too high or too far away from the conditioning unit. And then we have number 4, the installation of the steam dosing unit that works perfectly and in harmony with the rest of the line. And last of all, number 5, this one will be covered in the next episode, is the setup and the usage of the conditioning unit.
Well, great, and I'm sure that you or anybody else from the steam team can help all the viewers with all these topics that we discussed today.
Absolutely. We've spent many years understanding this topic. And throughout our expert center, we continue to work on new innovative solutions for the industry and our customers.
Frank, thank you so much. I'd also like to thank Hans, of course, and Eric and Ronald for sharing their thoughts today. And a big thanks also to Agrifouw and Jan Groen for his valuable insights. Now, before we say goodbye, if you still have questions about any other element of this episode, our live stream will remain open for a short while. And of course, we welcome all those questions about conditioning, which we'll be covering in the next episode, to be broadcast on the 15th of June at 11 AM Central European Time. Don't miss that. Thank you for watching and participating, of course. I sincerely hope you found it useful. See you next time, and keep looking forward. Frank, that was good, right?
And that wraps it up for this episode of Feed Forward. But the conditioning story doesn't end here. Don't forget to join us for part 2 of this conditioning special, scheduled for broadcast at 11 AM Central European Time on the 15th of June. In what promises to be our most ambitious Feed Forward yet, the Triot team will provide a unique visual walkthrough of the entire conditioning process, the different systems and setups available, and when to use them. As ever, we'll be answering your questions on this topic, as well as any you may have on the episode you've just seen. Our live stream will now remain open for a short while, or you can contact us via the usual social media channels. So please, get in touch and we will get back to you. In the meantime, thanks to our panel and guests for this episode. And most of all, thanks to you all for joining us. We hope to see you again next month.